So, good morning, everyone. Welcome again to the Peacebuilding in Africa series. It has been very enlightening so far. I've learnt a lot myself, and I'm so excited this week to welcome Richard Teny, who is a remarkable humanitarian development expert from South Sudan, who's got extensive experience in both national and international fields around conflict and crisis prevention, recovery, peace building. He is the executive director of the Coalition for Humanity in South Sudan. So he mainly focuses around issues of social advocacy, sustainable development, promoting human rights. I know him as someone who, despite the incredibly fragile peace situation in South Sudan, he is someone who is always inspiring and always positive and just a fountain of knowledge. So I'm really excited to welcome him to speak this week.
Thank you, Professor Scanlon. That was a generous introduction. Thank you so much, Kaya, and the members of uh, of this presentation. I think it has been a wonderful weeks of learning from each one of us. So I'm happy today to be able to present to you um, peace building in South Sudan and looking at the role of the churches and especially the community-based organization. Um, I have to mention that from the onset that you can't talk about South Sudan without talking about Sudan. So you will see in my presentation that I'm going to share that I'll be talking a lot about Sudan and South Sudan because they are kind of intertwined. So I would like to know if somebody is seeing my screen.
Yes, we
Yes, yeah.
see.
You're visible.
Thank you. Um, this presentation will be looking at how churches and the civil organizations in South Sudan and also back in Sudan have contributed to building peace among communities, and also how they have also built or contributed to enhancing or bringing the peace at the national and regional level. So I will start with as I mentioned, I will start with some historical context of the journey of peace in Sudan and South Sudan. Sudan and South Sudan have been uh, in wars, have gone through a number of wars way before it's independent. All of you remember that, or most of you remember that Sudan got independent in 1956. But even before that, in 1955, there had been war. And that war ran from 1955 to 1972. That was a war that was called Anyanya One War. That was between the Northerners and the South Sudanese. And that war was ended briefly by an agreement that was signed in Addis Ababa called Addis Ababa Peace Agreement. But that was also abrogated again in 1973. And then people went back to war. I mean, in 1980, 82, 80, 81 there. And then people went back to the second liberation struggle in 1983 to 2005. And that was one of the most intense conflict that was led by the Sudan People Liberation Movement, Sudan People Liberation Army. And that war was dubbed as one of the most deadliest war in Africa, claiming over 2 million lives and displacing other 4 millions to neighboring countries of Kenya, Uganda, and Congo. That war raged on until 2025, until 2005, where there was a peace agreement that was signed between Sudan government and the Sudan People Liberation Movement that offered South Sudan an autonomy and wait for referendum at the end of the interim period. So that referendum was conducted in 2011, and over 98%, 98.8% to be precise, voted in support of succession. and that gave birth to the current South Sudan that we're talking about. So from 2011, July 9, we had got our independence, and there was a lot of jubilation. People were very happy, but that was short-lived because in December 2013, South Sudan also got into crisis again, which I will talk to how that crisis is still evolving. Just to bring you to context about, because you can't talk about peace without talking about the background of the conflict. Sudan, as I mentioned in the first slide, that has been in conflict even before it's independent, has been having challenges because of so many problems. Okay, Sudan calls itself, they pride themselves in being multicultural, multi-religious, multi-ethnic society. But I think from the research, people were believing that they do not preach. I mean, they do not do what they preach. And some of the research that have led to even now the succession of South Sudan was majorly based on three major areas. And one of them is what we call identity crisis. Because the Northerners who actually were in charge of the whole country, whether resource-wise, whether ruling or authority, they were more or less Islamic, and they want the whole country to be more Islamized. But if you could know, South Sudan and the whole of Darfur region and the Southern Kordofan are a mix of African that believe in some Christianity as well as as well as as well as an African beliefs. So as a result of the Arab Islamic dominant that is trying to push people toward that kind of religion, people were not happy with it, and that was one of the problem that led to the problem that led occurring to the succession of South Sudan. And the other one was now the was that because of the war and because of the domination of the Arab in the north, the southern part was actually left to be a place of like a war theater. So people were fighting from the south, and obviously, if people are fighting in an area, you can't expect any development. So much of the development was not happening in the south, but happening in the north, and that has resulted in most of the resources being focused in the hand of a very few ethnic groups that are mostly in the northern Sudan. And then the last one is the marginalization, which I have also mentioned there, that because the people in the south and also the African who are actually in the other transition areas like southern Kordofan, northern, Darfur and Nuba Mountain were actually marginalized, and as a result, they were not able to benefit much from the cake, the national cake. And that kind of marginalization made people feel very bitter, and they felt that they don't feel belong to Sudan. So some of the challenges that have led to the succession are around the root cause that I've mentioned here. But I also would like to also highlight very briefly the issue about the current situation in South Sudan when it comes to the conflict, because you can't mention briefly what the situation is like today. So I am not going to go very far because I know we have a lot of data about the situation, but I would just mention that currently in South Sudan, we have, and even part of Sudan, we have food insecurity and famine risk as a result of the conflict, the ongoing conflict between Sudan, within Sudan, South Sudan. We have displacement and refugee crisis, where in April, when Sudan crisis started, over 1 million Sudanese refugees and also South Sudanese returnees have fled back to South Sudan and Sudan. And that has also made the situation worse. You can see some of the pictures that I got from online. And also as a result of infunctionality or most of the system not functioning, we have a disease outbreak where, as we speak, even in South Sudan, we have a number of countries that have a number of counties that are facing severe cholera outbreak, other diseases like measles affecting children, and so many other diseases. That has been also now the impact has been made worse by the humanitarian funding cuts that everyone is aware about from the US. So that has made it also worse that people are not able to be provided with basic services, food, medicine, and water. And lastly, I think from 2 or 3 months ago, South Sudan has been struggling to remain steadfast in the implementation of the revitalized peace agreement, and that has led to detention of the first vice president and other members of his party that are arrested and in detention. And while the government is pushing on or insisting that the peace agreement is on track, other people, including observers, are believing that things are not on track. So that is the background. So, but let me come back to what has the church done? What have the church and the CSOs been doing way back in ensuring that they contribute effectively to peace? At the height of the conflict in 1983, it was quite impossible to access communities in places that were called uh, rebel control areas, and also some IDPs even within Sudan, Khartoum. And the church took up the role, ensuring that they were able to step in and support. And there was the formation of what they call the Sudan Council of Churches. That was a combination or a consortium of churches that was supporting IDPs, people who are displaced, and with some emergency support both within Sudan, Khartoum, Pripris. And later they also realized that that support was not enough because it was being provided to people who have fled from the south going to the north. But there were also other, which is a huge population of people that were also based outside Khartoum that were also in need of help. And then that came the birth of what they call the New Sudan Council of Churches, which was formed in 1989 to reach war-affected areas. That was basically based in the south, in other big towns like Wau, Juba, and other areas that were far away from Sudan. And that umbrella has been holding most of the churches together. It was a multi-dominant members, churches from different denominations were part of it, and they have been working together until 2007, when now the peace agreement was being implemented, and they changed the name to South Sudan Council of Churches in 2011 after the independence. And that church body has been running most of the peace, it's more especially grassroots peace initiatives. I wanted to speak very briefly about how the church has been participating or the approach to peace process. Looking at this pyramid that I'm taking from John Paul, who had been also researching a lot in South Sudan, he had been categorizing or coming up with a pyramid that has 3 levels. And I will be talking very much on the level 3, which is the grassroots leadership. So what Paul is trying to say that the local communities, which is involving the church, the women group, play a very important part in ensuring that peace processes are actually able to hold, or that issues that are important to the community are brought to the attention of the leaders. So this has been what the church has been doing. The indigenous NGOs, community developers, local health officials, chiefs have been very, very instrumental in ensuring that the voices of the community on the ground are actually being heard. So using that approach, where they are bringing in now the information from down and bringing up, and we have witnessed this in all our peace negotiations across different countries. We have countries that have been very famous for negotiating our peace agreements. One of them is the Ethiopia, where we have the Addis Ababa peace agreement. We have the current revitalized peace agreement being negotiated there, and also one of the most successful, the one that led to the independence of South Sudan, the comprehensive peace agreement being handled in Kenya. So the church has been very instrumental. The CSOs have been very instrumental. We have prayers. We have people talking about the need, representing the need. So one of the success of the church in this grassroots leadership approach is that the church is also seen as a neutral body. They are not affiliated to any group, warring groups that are taking arms. So they bring in now the sub part of being neutral and bring in now the voice of the voiceless, and try to bring in issues that are usually not discussed or not in the interests of the big guys who are fighting either for power or for resources, but they bring in now the voices of the community, and they use this, making sure that they bring advocacy, they talk about healing and reconciliation. And even before coming to those negotiation tables, the church have also been very instrumental in supporting community members who are going through a lot of trauma, the trauma healing. Churches work, even as we speak, in South Sudan, working with communities, working with youth, engaging them to ensure that community members have a dialogue, provide psychosocial support, and are able to heal from the trauma that they have gone through during the wars. They are like a harm where people can come and lean and share the experiences and get the support they need. The church have also been very instrumental in South Sudan in ensuring that we get to somewhere in terms of peace agreement that you see. Some of the work they do are usually done behind the scene, and they try to do a lot of political advocacy and reconciliation behind the scene, and make sure that leaders who are actually a part in terms of the opposition are brought together by doing those behind the scene negotiations with the church, to make sure that when they come to the negotiation table, they're able to have their position aligned. And that's one of the roles that the church has done a lot. I'll be talking about that briefly in some of the things that they have done prior to 2005 Comprehensive Peace Agreement. So the church, apart from working with leaders, they also work among themselves, which we call the people-to-people peace process, where they work building trust. And one of the examples that I would like to cite here was when leaders, especially led by the chiefs, by elders, were brought together for the first time in 1998 in Logishogi in Kenya, to have the first meeting where chiefs and community leaders from Dinka and Nuer communities were brought together, and they were provided a forum where they were able to tell stories, where they were able to talk about the traditional rituals, the community approach to solving problems. And they realized that most of the processes, most of these community members share a rich culture, and the culture is the same, despite the fact that they are being divided along different lines because of political interests. And people in that workshop, if somebody have an opportunity to go online, you can be able to read about it. It was a symbol of peace. And one of the bishop, a South Sudanese bishop, called Nathaniel Grant, took a very big share in the meeting and held the chair up and was looking very tired and was telling people, "Can somebody help me?" And that was a symbolism showing that if people are working together, people can be able to solve the problem. So it was emotional, first time bringing people together, where people were able to say, we have one people, we have a lot of similarity, and there's a way in which we can be able to make peace. And one of the most important points that people mentioned in that forum was that even ourselves, without even our leaders, we have the ability to make peace ourselves without our leaders. And we can talk to our leaders and tell them we have accepted peace and we wanted to work together with this community and we want you to join. So that was an important point that people made as a resolution for the 1998 peace agreement and I mean peace meeting, and that led to 1999 Wunlit Peace Conference that was done in Wunlit. Wunlit is in Warrap State, a small town where people from Western Upper Nile, Nuer from Western Upper Nile, and the Dinka from Greater Barghazal all converged there and were able to have what they call intercommunal reconciliation, where they did a lot of rituals, and people say we need to embrace peace. And it was led actually by the church, the New Sudan Council of Churches. So you can see the role of the church in pushing for local peace in different fronts. And one of the most important aspects also of the church was also seen where what we call Kisumu City Dialogue, where the church leaders, because we had a deadlock in 2002, 2003, where the US was actually pushing for a position paper on the comprehensive peace agreement negotiation that were happening in Kenya. But because the two rivaling groups, the faction that was led by Dr. John Garang, the SPLA mainstream, and the one that was led by Dr. Riek Machar were apart, and there was no way the peace would be achieved with us, these two groups working together. So the church worked behind the scene, and they convened what we call Kisumu City Dialogue, where the clergy worked together and brought the two leaders together, and the two leaders agreed and did what we call the merger of 2002, just few days or few months while the peace agreement was actually on the starting point in Kenya. And actually that was one of the things that led to success of the comprehensive peace agreement negotiation in Kenya. So if you look at all of this, you will see that the role of the church and the CSOs has been instrumental. I would give an example of a recent time where Pope Francis also invited our leaders in Rome and kissed the feet in a dramatic plea for peace. Our leaders couldn't believe that. They were shocked that Pope Francis would bow down and kiss their feet and hug them to embrace peace and all the commune together. The Pope Francis visit, I mean the visit of the leaders to Rome was followed actually by Pope Francis' visit to South Sudan, accompanied by the Anglican and the Presbyterian church leaders who came to Juba for almost a week and had the prayers and also consult with leaders and also preach peace and made it very clear that we have to maintain peace. So and we saw and one of the things that came out of this conversation with the church is that our leaders, especially President Salva Kiir, made it many times that he is not going to return the country to war. Although the political activity that you see around our country are resembling to action that would take us to war, but his words are quite clear and says, I do not want to take this country back to war. And I think it is because those are the commitments they made to the church, especially Pope Francis during the visit and also the visit of the Pope and other clergy to Juba. Just to wind down, we have also seen the role of the church in many places. One case that I wanted to cite is a case of Jonglei State. The example of the Wunlit Peace Agreement is a situation that happened in Western Upper Nile, and part of Greater Bargazal. But also, the role of the church have also been seen across. And one case that I wanted to cite is also the Jonglei state, which has been troublesome because of cattle raiding, child abduction, and a number of issues. And the church have also been working very closely with a number of community-based organizations and women group to bridge the gap, make sure that there is also peaceful coexistence. So the the cattle raiding has been escalating since 2009, where there was also post disarmament that was tried by the government. I think those one did not work. But if you look at the role of the church, where they were using now the reconciliation approach and a dialogue has bear some fruits compared to forced disarmament and other aspects that the government use. So the church has been doing that, and they continue to do that in Jonglei State. And we have seen children have been returned that were abducted. Cattle were also returned, and there was also some level of normalcy where people were able to move between locations, which was not there before. Just to sum it up, the church is still continuing, and they are continuing working with peace actors and community members to look at if you look at the current peace trajectory that we have in South Sudan, we have a political standoff between the SPLM-IG. IG is in government, and IO is in opposition. So they are the same group of SPLM, but there's a group that is calling himself or itself in government, another group calling itself in opposition. They have been having a standoff, one that I've mentioned earlier, leading to detention of some of the leaders. The church is working hard to diffuse the tension and make sure that people return to the table. Of course, other actors, region and the international community are also doing the same. We have also seen communal violence where cattle raiding has increased. I was just mentioning before I start this presentation about an incident that happened last week in Unity State, this week in Unity State, just a few minutes or a few days, a day before I traveled, just a day after I traveled, where a number of people have also been killed. And you can also see sexual related violence ongoing in some of those locations. We are also seeing the border tension and internal between Sudan and also internally Sudan that has also had a lot of negative effect, including the stoppage of oil flow. I think 2 weeks ago, or a month ago, there was a report that the oil cargo that was about to be sent, a shipment that was going to be sent for international market was actually hit by drones, and that made that the oil is no longer able to flow as it used to be, or if it flows, it's at a minimal, and that's actually the economic lifeline of Sudan and South Sudan, and that also made things a bit hard. So if you look at all of these, the church has a hand, and they try to work, sometimes not seen visibly, but they work behind the scene to ensure that every party or all the parties involved are able to reconcile or to have a convergence so that they can be able to have a space to discuss and talk. So I would like to conclude that the role of the church has been prominent in our context in South Sudan. And one of the things that I would want to highlight is that South Sudan is over 60% Christian, making a church role to be very prominent. They have been mediating and they're listened to. And for that reason, they have been able to advocate and bring in now the knowledge from the grassroots so that people can be able to reconcile. They are also trusted and they are able to engage at the local level. So people trust them, and as a result, they have been able to bring in a lot of changes, especially when now they are doing, you would see them leaving people in peace, engaging people at the local level to ensure that they live in peace, but they also at the same time taking messages, consolidated messages from a grassroots, and also take it to the table, the higher table, when people are able to negotiate peace. The church approach to peace building has been nonviolent peace advocacy, which has also been seen yielding fruits, because instead of confrontational approach that has been used by political parties or other groups, especially the armed groups, uh, the church has been using dialogue-based approach, which has prevented conflict escalation. They have also conducted a number of workshops, including meetings, which are community-led, ensuring that people are able to reconcile and 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 live in harmony. So so the church and the communities based organization or civil society have contributed a lot in ensuring that peace prevails in South Sudan, and most time you would see them doing this either visibly or invisibly behind the scene to ensure that the people who have very different views and quite apart are able to be brought together. I think that is the end of the presentation I've seen. I've been given a head up, but I think that is where I would like to stop for today. Thank you.